In the mid 80s, I was working in television. I did a few, maybe 7 episodes of Heart to Heart. That was my first show. I was lucky because everyone knew I was gay. You know, there was no, I wasn't passing. And so I never ran into any problem. On the other hand, I never pitched for shows that weren't a little gay. Like Heart to Heart was a pretty gay show. It was the Thin Man, so there was repartee, and I never worked for an action show. I never did a Mannix or anything like that. So you could kind of self-select where you would find congenial places to work. Mark Crowley was the producer of Heart to Heart, and of course he wrote Boys in the Band, and that was a nice place. ABC in general was a nice place. Aaron Spelling, his whole company, they were very pro-female and very pro-gay. So there were a lot of gay people working for Aaron Spelling. And so there were places you could work very comfortably and not have to be in a closet. Not that that was ever an option for me. I was working for a Dynasty spinoff called The Colbys. We didn't have gay people. In fact, Dynasty had a gay person that they made ungay after a while. I don't know how he ended up. Did he end up gay? I don't know. But he was a big deal. Stephen Carrington was a big deal that character was on a TV show. But, it was those early depictions where it's a tragic story and it's crazy. He's a nice guy, but he's gay. It's that kind of thing. It would be about 1982. Or would it be 81? It might be 1981. It was GRID then, Gay-Related Immunity Deficiency. It would be that time. And then around 1982, you would start seeing people on the street with KS lesions or very thin, suddenly very thin people who looked great 6 months ago. You would see them and you would be very surprised at how they looked. So it was happening at that, and we were all very, very, very concerned about it. And then my best friend from college, that would be in 1985, 86, he was in London at the time, and he came down with AIDS. I don't know that we called it HIV then. I don't know. There wasn't the antibody test. There was, he had CMV and some other, yeast infections that wouldn't go away and that kind of thing. So he moved into my cottage, my office where I work now, where I've worked for a long time. He moved in there in 1986 and died in 1987 there. And then a year later, another friend of mine came to live there. So I had a lot of experience with people in the final stages of AIDS. First movie I wrote was Love Field, which was sort of about an inappropriate love between a white woman and a black man. So, it was a coded kind of version of what it felt like to be marginalized or to have a love that was unwelcome. But I didn't do, I don't think AIDS appeared in anything until I wrote Boys on the Side. Boys on the Side had a gay story in it. Didn't come out the way I wanted. I wrote a movie because I wanted to write a movie about people who lived with an HIV diagnosis. So I wrote this script. Whoopi was going to be in it right away. She signed on right away. And then they got the director, Herb Ross, to sign on. So I knew Herb Ross from Turning Point and the fact that he was Lee Radziwill's husband. So I had a meeting with him. He called me down to, I guess it was it MGM then? The Sony Studios. I don't think it was Sony then, it was MGM. And I had a meeting with him, and he said, I liked your script very much. I said, thank you. And he said, but there's something wrong with it. What's wrong with it? And I said, well, you tell me. I liked it the way I wrote it. And he said, no, you blew the ending somehow. That's what's wrong with it. However that meeting ended, I got out of the room, got in my car and drove home, and my agent called and said, wow, you really blew that meeting. I said, why? What happened? He goes, he never wants to see you again. He doesn't want you on the set. And if he does the movie, you're banned. And by then I had sold the movie. I'd sold the script, so I didn't have any power. So I never was on the set of that film. And I made them pay me my entire production bonus to stay away. I said, if I'm going to stay away, they have to pay me the production bonus now, not when the movie is produced. So they did. And then when I saw the movie, I realized what he wanted. He wanted the character, Robin, who had HIV to die at the end. So she dies at the end of that movie, which was the opposite thing of what I had wanted to do. I wanted to show that, you can be very, very sick, you can recover, what is it like to live with HIV? Because by then, people were living with HIV. The cocktail had come out, and you could get very, very, very sick, and you could die, or you could almost die, but then you could almost, you could recover. And I wanted to do a story like that, but that was not, they were still going to turn it into a tragic disease story. I mean, it's perfectly valid. It just isn't what I wanted to do. Then I wrote The Opposite of Sex, which was about the aftermath of, the people left behind, because that was a big deal. When the people did die and did leave your life, it made you think a lot about the country we live in, the world we live in, the religions we follow, and trying to make sense of it all. There's a lot of thinking that goes on after you lose somebody to AIDS, and a lot of reexamination of stuff. And, that I wanted to talk about that in The Opposite of Sex. And I suppose it's a victory that young kids today don't think about it. I'm happy that they're able to not think about it, that it's not a part of their life. It was such a part of every gay man's life in the 80s and 90s. It was huge. It was all you could think about because you were marked, and you were vulnerable. And it impacted how you connected with other people and how intimate you were getting with people and how, protected you would be in terms of connecting with people. Like maybe, you wouldn't have the kind of, maybe you would choose to have more straight friends or more lesbian friends. It impacted you a lot because, people were dying around you. People like you were dying. So it made you, it's kind of screwed people up, I think, a lot. And it's a long recovery.